What's up, boxers? Start getting excited because in this video we're going to be taking a look at BuildBox 3D and we're going to be going over getting started. So when you first open up BuildBox, you're going to be greeted by the BuildBox welcome window. And this is a super handy tool because you can take your mouse and you can hover over the different thumbnails and get a quick preview at what the gameplay type is going to look like. So if you have a gameplay in mind that is similar to one of these, this is a great starting off point. But I want to make it clear because some people think that you are limited to just these templates, and that's not true. You can also start off with a basic template, default template, and build something completely unique. Your only real limitation is your own imagination. So if you find a template that you really like and you want to mark it as one of your favorites, you can go up here to the corner and click this little star button, and this will add it to your favorites and you'll know that you can come back to this one later. I'm going to go ahead and start off with the Switch template, which is very similar to the Zigzag style game that was released by Ketchup and did really well in the Play Store and the App Store. So I'm going to double click on that template and let's get started. Once you choose a template, BuildBox is going to take you to your game's mind map, and this is the general flow of your game. You have a starting point where your game loads up, it goes into your 3D world, and you might have something like a user interface or a UI that you can use to keep track of the score of your game. When you select a 3D world or a UI, you'll notice that some menu items and settings open up over here on the right hand side. These can be very important, such as adding music to your game, which you can do really easily by selecting an MP3 file and just dragging it in right in here into the music box, and then it'll add some game music to your game. You can also change things as fundamental as the gravity for your game by changing the gravity setting on your 3D world. So I highly recommend going through some of these settings and experimenting to see how it affects your 3D world and how it affects your gameplay overall. And if you want to add additional 3D worlds or UIs, it's really easy to do so. You can do it by just right-clicking with your mouse and then clicking Add New 3D World or Add New UI. You can just click here, and then if you want to delete a 3D world or UI, you just select the 3D world that you want to delete and hit backspace or delete on your keyboard, and then you're good to go. Once you've got your settings dialed in, you can double click on your 3D world and see your 3D world environment, which is really cool. First, let's talk about a couple controls that you can use to navigate in this 3D environment. First off, you can zoom in and out using the scroll wheel on your mouse. Also, you can hold down the space bar and use your left click on your mouse to shift around and to slide things around the way you want. Also, while holding down the space bar, use your right click to rotate. This is going to be really helpful when you're navigating through this 3D environment. Now I want to quickly show you some of the tools that you can use in this 3D world environment that are going to really help your development. In the upper left hand corner, you have the select tool, the move tool, the rotation tool, and the scaling tool. And you can use these tools to select objects in your 3D environment, and you can use the move tool, for example, to move objects in the X, Y, and Z axis. You can do so by grabbing the green, red, and blue arrows and moving them in the way that you want them to. And if you're not happy with where you placed a particular object, you can always hit Command Z or Control Z on your keyboard and move it right back into place. Now, you can select these green, red, and blue arrows, but you can also select this yellow icon here in the middle and move the object around freely. And again, if you're not happy with where you placed it, you just hit Command Z or Control Z and undo it and put it right back into place. For the rotation tool, you can do the same setup where you rotate objects along the X, Y, and Z axis by selecting the blue, the red, and the green rotation tools. And I'm going to move it right back into place here, and it works a little bit differently for rotation. Instead of having the yellow icon here in the center like it has with the move tool, and you'll see soon with the scaling tool, it has a yellow circle here on the outside, which allows you to rotate it completely around just the way you want it to. And with the scale tool, you can scale objects in the X, Y, and Z axis by hitting the green, red, and blue scale tools, and you can also scale an object with the aspect ratio in place by hitting the yellow tool and moving it in and out like this. So I'm going to hit Control Z and Command Z on my keyboard to put it back into place, but if I wanted to move an object around to a specific location, I can also do so manually by entering in numbers in the upper right hand corner. So for the position on the Y axis, maybe I want to raise up the platform just a little bit. So I'll put 2 in instead of 0 for the Y axis, and you'll notice that the platform is going to move upwards a little bit. So you can see there that by changing the setting in the y-axis to 2, the platform has now been raised. I can easily just select the 2 and put it back to 0 to move it right back down into place. The next important thing I want to show you is the menu items over here on the left-hand side. You can select the Objects menu to get a drop-down list of all of the objects that are being used in your 3D environment. And you can select the objects over here on the left-hand side to get more settings to open up over here on the right-hand side. You can do the same thing with characters by selecting the Characters menu, and you can select the main character and get additional settings to open up over here on the right. Later in another video, I'm going to dive into this a little bit more in depth, but we also have this really cool thing called the Asset Library where you can use all of these different shapes for your gameplay. We're also going to have smart assets that you can use for your gameplay, which is going to make game development so much easier and fun. Down here at the bottom, we also have the scenes for your 3D world. You can see that we're looking at the start scene, so right here is where the player is going to start their game. We also have scene 1 and scene 2, where you encounter different obstacles in different difficulty levels. If you really like a scene and you'd like to create a scene that's maybe a little bit similar, you can select a scene down here at the bottom and hit D on your keyboard for duplicate, and you can see that we've made a copy of the scene. If you want to start off with a brand new fresh scene and add a scene as well, you can also go down here to the Add button and add a blank scene here where you can see it's untitled and it's just a blank canvas for you to work on. If you need to delete a scene, it's very easy. You just select the scene that you want to delete, and then you hit delete or backspace on your keyboard, and a pop-up window will show up and it'll ask you, are you sure you want to delete current section? You go ahead and hit Y on your keyboard or select yes, and it'll delete the scene for you. I also want to show you a couple useful tools over here on the right side. In the upper right hand corner, you can select this little sphere right here to see the collision shapes of all of the objects in the scene. You can also select this little camera right here, and you can see the camera view of what the scene is going to look like when the game is actually being played. The next thing I want to show you over here on the right hand side is the preview button, the font editor, and the settings for your game. You just click on this gear right here and you've got the project settings for your game where you can add things like your game name and your game icon, and you can change things around like the orientation of your game. You can put it in portrait or landscape. This is going to be extremely useful, especially when you're exporting your game to a device. Next thing I want to show you is the font editor, and we have a bunch of fonts that are ready to go for you to use, but we also allow you to add new font templates and style them just the way you want so you can use them again and again in your game. Lastly, I'm going to show you the preview button, and you're going to use this button a lot to test out your game and see what your gameplay is like. So I'm going to hit the preview button over here, and you can see the preview window pops open, and you can actually play your game and see what it's going to be like for you and your players. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is how to keep track of your points that you can see here. When we're collecting these green spheres, the points are being added to your game. So I'm going to show you how to set that up right now. So I'm going to exit out of my preview window, and let's go over here to our mind map, and I'm going to show you how to add some points in a score label to your UI. To do this, you just double click on your UI, and you can see here that we already have a score label in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this score label, and I'm going to show you how to add a fresh score label to your game. So over here, you just want to go over to your labels menu and grab the default font label right here. And so we're going to place this right about here, dead center of the game and kind of towards the top. And what we want to do is we want to change this from being user text, because right now if you just enter in your text like score here, and I selected it, you can see here that this changes into a label. So if you wanted to put like a score type and then put the score right here, you can do so by changing it to user text and just adding in the text right there. But if you want it to read as a score, as a number, you just change the function to score, and I'm going to have this centered, and you want to change it to the current world that you're working with, and change the score type from distance to points, because you can see that before in the 3D world that the green spheres were set to points, and then you want to change the amount to current. And then I like to have my alignment centered, and I'm going to go ahead and just keep the default font as it is. So we're going to see now that the score is going to be reading towards the top over here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play on my preview, and you can see now that the points are being added towards the top. And what's even really cool is I'm going to go ahead and let the character be defeated, you can move things around real time. And let's say I want to have my score in the upper left-hand corner. Well, I can do that right here in my UI, and I can see it happening over here in my preview window, which is really, really helpful for development. So now when I play this again, the points are going to be read from the upper left-hand corner. Okay, Boxers, I hope you thought that was useful. This has been the basics with Buildbox 3. Now we're going to be moving on to some other videos where we talk more in depth about the software.